Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Education Finance Committee meeting for Monday, July 13th, 2026. Call the meeting to order. First item for us is public comment. Not seeing any today, so we'll move on to item number 3, approval of the minutes. We have the meeting minutes from June 15th, 2026. Bonnie, did you receive any corrections? Do we have any at this time? All right. Do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes? I'll second. Yeah, I'll second. All in favor, aye? Aye. Aye. All opposed?
Do I have to abstain?
And an abstain? Okay. The minutes pass. Okay, item number 4, discussion and consideration. We have the 2026-2027 tentative budget. Mr. Latham?
All right, good evening to the Finance Committee. So tonight we'll be taking a look at the 26-27 tentative budget. This is budget proposal 3 of 4 that the board and the committee will see before we get to adoption next month. This runs from July 1st of 2026, the current year, through June 30th of next year. And we'll just move right into the presentation. So this is a little bit about our budget timeline. It follows our traditional practice of some preliminary budgets that are specific to the larger dollar accounts that we have. So we listen to technology, we listen to transportation, our operations and maintenance, and then lastly our education fund. And then we come back with a draft budget and the tentative today. And then we'll put it on file for 30 days. So it'll be on file in my office for comment from July 16th through August 21st. That's 30 days plus that we need. We put an ad in the paper that then creates a hearing that will take place on August 24th. Where we can hear testimony. Testimony is given on 2 sides. It's given by the board. It's also given by the citizens or audience. And then we'll close the hearing and move on through the budget process to hopefully reach adoption. So that's the timeline that we follow. That's kind of our district's traditional process. Some others might streamline it, but that is our process. All right, a little bit about our budget items. So as you know, our revenues are broken apart by local. That's typically taxation and fees and other collections that we have. Everything from food service to gate fees to get into an athletic event to participation. Then we have our state funds, for the most part, mostly evidence-based funding. But we do have a couple reimbursements, categoricals that come back to us. There's 4 of those. 2 of the largest ones are usually in the transportation fund, so that's regular and vocational, and then our special education reimbursement. Their expenses follow our typical schedule: salaries, benefits, purchase services, supplies and materials. Our capital outlay, which now under the board policy is $10,000 or more. I think when I first started it was $2,000 and $3,000. It just kind of has increased with the economy over time. And this is my 14th year with the district this month, so I appreciate the board's confidence in me. And it gives me a nice track record to see how things have progressed. Other objects, those are more things like our tuition, our dues, our fees that we have. Then lastly, our capital equipment, which is now under a much larger threshold. And then lastly, we talk about some of our fund balances. They're all estimated for June because they're pending our external audit. And so we just have to keep in mind that those could be adjusted. And we typically have some adjustments that occur in a fund or between funds based upon the auditor's judgment. Since we're modified accrual, we have 60 days after the close of the fiscal year for them to make any transactions, so that could affect final numbers. Revenue considerations, so we're looking at our EAV trends. We're still anticipating next year a positive EAV growth. The 2025 estimated tax year levy will soon, after the budget's passed, become the 26-year tax levy, but we look at that as well just to see where we receive those funds and timing. Did we get those mostly in May, June, or July through October? And is there some variance between those when people pay their taxes on time that we try to account for? And then there's always some taxes that aren't collected. Either they're not paid or they're adjusted at the Board of Review or at PTAP. And then lastly, we look at those tax receipts that come in the fees. We estimate the personal property replacement tax. We do not get that number from the state until August, which that'll be like the very last number we drop in at the end of that. That's why it's the end of August and not the beginning. I need that number to be more appropriate and correct. And then we'll look and anticipate as we see the enrollment grow for the district. We'll anticipate and forecast our registration. Our participation kind of follows a standard process of historical data. And then lastly, our interest income, which we will believe to be down. I'm starting to see an increase in the offerings for some of our investments, so we did see that slightly tick up on an upswing the last couple weeks, and that's a good positive thing for the economy and for us as we look for our return on investment. State revenue is mostly evidence-based funding. We see very little change. We do get a few extra dollars. And then we look at our title grants and carryover funds. We will probably have a lot less carryover this year. We've been very good about trying to spend all those dollars. And so we just did our grants today and turned those in for, some of those will be our final reports, and some carry on through August for us. That's just how grants are written. So sometimes we have a little bit of grant years open. And then our ALOB is our Alternative Learning Opportunity Program funding. We do it at the middle school and the high school. So those are dollars we get through the ROE. Then lastly, our federal revenue on federal grants and carryover. So any change in the governor's budget that anticipates more money for categoricals could be positive in our direction. We just don't know always what that percentage is and what it means to the district. So there could be something there too as you get to your legislative report that may impact our budget still. All right, any questions on revenue? Okay, moving to expenditures, these are traditional ones. Staffing levels are anticipated to be full-time, full FTE unless they're part-time. Our employee benefits are FICA, Medicare, MRF, those all come out of Fund 50. And our health benefits come out of whatever fund the employee works in. So if they work out of the education fund, they're paid, their health is paid out of there. Their operations and maintenance, their health benefits are paid out of there. And same with transportation. And then lastly, TRS is paid out of the education fund because those are the educated licensed areas that we of educators that we pay the TRS and THIS benefits on. THIS is a health type of insurance. And then we look at our professional services, and we look at our professional development. We have our supplies and materials. We always look at the inflationary costs. It was down, it went up. I haven't seen the new number come out yet. Hopefully it'll be good for us. And then our capital outlay, as I mentioned, is now items per board policy over 10,000. Other objects is tuition, debt service, transfers, fees for areas that we apply to. Some of those are professional. And then our non-capital is under 10,000. So we're all looking for the final number for our end of year transactions. Those will come unaudited in your June treasurer's report. And then we also will look at some of the capital plan and safety. You'll see a couple different numbers this year in the budget. You'll see like a $7.7 million budget. That's really what we're paying out of the capital fund, but you also see $500,000 in life, health, safety. So those two together come up to a bigger number. You'll see them broken apart though, but they're part of an overall capital plan. So when you do see those numbers, you're like, well, I thought it was 8.2 million. It is if you take the 7.7 and a half million, but the two of them are the total capital plan. All right, so here's a little bit about the education fund. Just a couple mentions on the local. We'll focus in two categories. Let me go ahead and get my laser display out of the way. Tonight we'll be looking at just these two, and then I'll talk about these two. That'll probably be the end of the light show tonight. So the biggest change from our local budget to our estimated really was probably the impact of interest income. We saw those investments come down. Those affected us somewhat greatly. Then we also know that we had some reduction in taxes that people paid, the board review. That's the biggest change from the 77 million to the 76 million. State funds were a little different. I made a little note of what that was, so I can share that with you. Those were just some less dollars that we got in from the state this year from what we anticipated. We did have seen over time some of the categoricals and some of our reimbursements somewhat be diminished, but that's contrary to federal where we see an uptick in some of our Medicaid reimbursements. So just a little bit of change from where we think we're going to be to things that happen throughout the year. So looking at 82 million to 81 million, very close. I'll take that as a win. Looking at the fiscal 27 budget, very comparable. The only change that we probably made in some of the local areas were just some minor adjustments that we saw from time to time. So when that June report came out, if there was an area of revenue that was a little lower in the ed fund, it may have been adjusted slightly. And overall, when you look at all the revenue, it was a little difference of about $150,000. Still adjustments that we felt needed to be made. State's very comparable. The one place that we did see maybe an increase in some of our federal dollars has to do with timing of reimbursements. So if we didn't get everything that we thought we'd get, we carry some of that over. It also has to do with the spending plan, right? So as we spend each, probably a nice way to put that's quarterly. Then we can anticipate what the next funding is. So if we kind of hit that spending mark, then we get the same amount of revenue. Hit the spending mark. If we're too low, then we don't get that. So it's a little fluctuation between what we spend and the timing of that to what we receive. We're still looking at a good $84 million in our revenue from draft to tentative. So good numbers. A little bit about the expenditure side. So when we look at the salary, those came down a little bit. Some of that has to do with the staffing levels and issues that occur. Benefits in the fiscal year 26, comparable. Same thing with our purchase services. I don't see a whole lot of change in there. Supply materials was down a little bit for the education side. My notes say that was due to textbook purchases, so we made a majority of the textbooks, but we had some that we didn't place. Those will be moved over to the current fiscal year, and just some timing things. It wasn't a large amount, not all of it's textbooks, but it was a significant area that I thought was worth noting. Capital outlay, very comparable from the fiscal 26 budget to where we estimate ending the fiscal year. Same with other objects, same with equipment. So overall, kind of very comfortable with the estimations there. On the draft side of the fiscal 27 budget, there's a little bit of change in salary. Some of that came down by looking where we have some of our teachers placed. So in the original numbers that came out in the preliminary, we then seen what some of their split assignments were as we start to realize where we're going to be placing teachers into next year ready. That allowed me to go back and make adjustments. So if someone had a 50-50 assignment, or I would have had 2 100s, I would have been able to pull some of that down. We do have some individuals like PE or music especially, or some of the other areas that maybe are a third, so that was able to be adjusted slightly as well, and that's the difference. The big change in benefits, so when we do the budget, we assume that everyone keeps their benefits, and we have a change. A couple things could affect that, right? I believe we added a classroom this year at Gilp, a teacher, so that would affect that the teacher had benefits. The biggest change, though, is just elections from the time we set the budget to when the insurance election period happens. It happens after we do the budget and start the process. I went back and looked at those numbers and basically brought them up to where it appears that the proper level would be. And so we made that adjustment in the office to better reflect where we believe the insurance is going to be for next year. It is a big jump, but I believe it's a truer number than what we had when we budgeted. It's just an unfortunate part of the timing of the benefit cycle. Purchase services, very comparable. Same with our supplies and materials, maybe a little bit of less. We've been doing a lot of maintenance and replacing a lot of items throughout the district, just smaller things such as faucets, items like that. Capital outlay is relatively the same from what we anticipated as a major capital spend, above 10,000. Other objects, that is lower because I backed out the transfer that was in there before. I believe that was the number that was off from last time to what a real number looked like. So it matches more of the other objects in the fiscal year 26 budget, fiscal year estimate expenses into the fiscal 27 budget. So I overstated that. And then lastly, the non-capital equipment's just up a little bit as we replace equipment. The cost of that goes up. So 88 million to 87 million. We were able to bring the budget down. I hope to do more when we get to the final adoption. So for me, the next step then is to go more, instead of a summary that we have that comes out in our treasury report, to go more line item by line item and make adjustments, and then also go back to the department head to justify some of those. Yes.
Quick question, Todd. The increase in benefits,
yes,
and the decrease in other objects, are they tied together? Is that for the majority of it, is that tied together, or is that completely different issue, two different issues?
That was a Toddism. They're almost inverse. So I had this higher and this lower when this should have been higher and that should have been lower. So yeah, from the budget, not by item category, but by the budgeting process. I underestimated the benefits. Now I'm overestimating them, and I overestimated the other objects because of the transfer amount, and now I'm actually underestimating that for a more truer number between this line here to where we're at. Yep. This number still kind of bothers me. I'll just be honest about that. So I need to go back, and that might be something to have a conversation with of the trend, and it could lead to a larger conversation of what we offer in our insurance plans. We've kind of consolidated some of those, but it was still another very large jump in our insurance. If you recall, it was 6% PPO, 10% HMO, 3% dental, almost 7.8 overall. That still is a very large jump of insurance from year to year. And especially if you went single to family, it was a much larger cost. Okay, other questions? All right, thank you for catching that, keeping me honest. I always have something that I think should have been better. That's a nice way to say that.
I just figured you changed that so that you wanted to see if we were going to catch it.
No, I'm glad you do. For some reason now I can't advance my page down here. I've apparently broke it. That's weird. It's not letting me advance. All right, so this is the education fund. This is the number I don't like. This is the number right here that bothers me. I lose sleep about this. So 26,244,086 is the estimated beginning fund balance. This is the revenue, a little more than 84 million. Compare the expenditures, 87 million. Anticipate this being probably a really good number. Could be a little bit less. For the fund transfer to Fund 20 to cover capital projects, leaving us this fund balance, which is probably a low since maybe I became more involved in the budget about 2014. I like to see a little higher number. It still meets the fund balance policy of the district. It's just when I look at the ability to invest out of our general fund, our largest fund, and that kind of makes my decisions harder on when to invest, how long, and what we tie our money into. A little bit about the operations and maintenance fund. Local went up mostly because we had some really good interest income. Those numbers, that fund balance stayed pretty high when we were investing, allowed us to maximize the return on that fund more than we thought we would, which I think is a good thing. And then we were able to use those dollars. There also was a little bit of EAV, of course, in there as well. So which was good as well. And then there also was a little bit of increase in the state funding there because we got that $50,000 grant. So overall we went from 15.8 to 16.8. And so I think that just shows some strength in the operation maintenance fund. It's a little easier to manage, right? It's a smaller fund. And then we look at the fiscal year 27. I didn't change anything because I still think that those are good numbers. I still think that revenue is going to be where it's at. We went back and recalculated the interest income, and then also the fees that we expect to get. That the 2.1 million is basically the evidence-based funding that we've continued to commit to that. So overall, we look at fiscal year 26 budget to its estimated ending. That almost fits in line with what we expect for next year. So it's almost the same spending, which is good. Stabilized. I think this is good for the fund. Okay, a little different story is the expenditure side. So we did see, so we'll go back to that fiscal year 26. We did see an increase in the salaries. I think that's two pieces. One, as you know, we kind of redid the way that we paid people in that when we redid that. Some people had extra incentive because of some of their additional duties and obligations. I think the other part of that is what you can't see in the details is that we cut back on the outsourcing for custodial services and we hired more people as well. So we had a better FTE that we had for our toward full employment, and so you see that in the salary number. Benefits was just up a little bit. That again, those are typical smaller changes. That's a smaller workforce. Instead of over 500 people, it's 80. Purchase services was just a little bit under. I went back to take a look at that about why our purchase services were a little lower, and I seen two things that stood out. We had a little less money that we spent on building improvements, which is probably a good thing, right? We either wasn't as much there as we thought we had to replace, or we had a better cost. And also that technology I mentioned. Technology comes out of two places. It comes out of the ed fund and the operations and maintenance, and this is more like the hardware part of it. And so for this part, there were some things that we, like for example, we bought student devices this year that we were going to buy next year, and we were going to buy some staff that we didn't. So we swapped a couple purchasing things based upon chip availability and the market, and really it's delivery. So we moved up some things, and other things got moved to next year.
Would this also be where you would see a lower cost due to the fact that we increased the number of employees or had them do it, so you didn't have to have as many third-party hires for, because we weren't full at the time?
Absolutely, I totally agree with that. And the other part that just came to me is that might even be some of our start of our cost energy savings that would have been out of probably some of our purchase services there too, if we had some of those under control, and also carries into our supplies as we talk about utilities as well. All right, that leads us into supplies and materials. So, you know, good controls there. We didn't exceed that. We were under in our capital outlay. Again, those are some of the other products. I think that's probably more in line with some of those tech purchases. And our other objects is kind of a reserve that we had. The $1,000 out of the $76,000 for dues and fees, the $75,000 as a contingency. So we spent very little of that, which is good. We didn't have better planning. Requires less of that, of the contingency. And then lastly, the non-capital equipment is very stable. So just a little bit of change there from what we anticipated. That's a good number. 14 million down to 13 million is a good number. And then when we look at fiscal year 27, I did increase the salaries a little bit just because I've seen them go up in the prior year, and that carries over with increases in salary as well. So if we had some increase in pay here, I made that change here as well. I've kept the benefits stable. I didn't see a lot of change in that. I didn't see a lot of change in fiscal year 27 for purchase services, or supplies and materials, or the other areas. So there's really just some adjustments in the salary and benefits. Just kind of kick this over to that 15 million amount. I don't want to see that either. I want to see if we can pull that back when we come back to that 14 million range, but we'll see what we can do. All right, any other questions on the expenditures? Okay, so 6.7 million is what we had the beginning fund balance. Estimate revenues at 16.9, expenditures at 15 million, ending fund balance at 8.6 million. We will have money flow through from ed fund at 2.5. We'll have transfers out at 7.7 million to fund 60, leaving us ending fund balance of 3.4 million right here. This is a concern to me too. In my past experiences, sometimes it's the March and April that we get to a low fund balance before we see taxes come in May. So I will have to work with Mr. Peterson at O&M to make sure we monitor that. We've gone in the negative before, and we've had to transfer money just for short term till taxes came through, but I feel a little bit better if that number was a little bit higher. All right, questions on the fund balance? Here's debt service, pretty stable. It just follows the interest income and the taxes, so not a whole lot there. You know, this is up higher because of interest income and some of our refunding we did previously, and I just kept this stable for now based upon our projections. These are the estimated expenditures. This was a new item here that wasn't budgeted. That was some of our legal guidance, so I put that there with a little bit of raise for them. I expect the billing to go up, but it's kind of a holding number. And then this is really just our cost of our principal and interest, so follows our debt book as we call it, so that's pretty much where it's at.
Can I ask you a question though? If this year we refinanced some of our bonds, do we not see that benefit in next year's expense for in that?
We will, but it's not always immediate because
Okay.
it has to do with how they structure the payments, and so a lot of refunding is very heavy on the interest side. We probably don't see that till we get a little farther down in the payment process.
I'm glad you asked that, Paul, because tonight in our regular meeting, we're going to talk about the next round of doing that. So, and I do think over time we will see that number be
Yeah, when you
lower.
see the savings, remember, it's over the time of what's left on the payment.
Yeah.
Probably on one of the refunding, probably not on the one coming, so. So here's the debt service. Again, it pretty much just grows a little bit because cost savings, interest income, and the fact that the county will always levy a little bit more for us. It's the process. Transportation fund. So I think our local funds came in really close to where they're supposed to be at. This was our bus sales. This is the difference here of when we get our payment. I do know in July, I anticipate that payment coming in by the end of June. It just came in the first week of July. So you'll see this adjusted a little bit here, probably more as we get next year's numbers. We have to submit the claim by August, and then I'll have a better idea what that reimbursement will be too. So we'll start working on it this month, and we'll update that before we get the adopted budget. So pretty stable across the bottom. It's good fun to keep track of. And then here's some of our expenditures. You can see we came under in salaries, but our benefits went up. That was a change of one person that moved from no insurance to a family plan. And so that cost is reflected right here in this $24,000. Purchase services look very good in line. Supplies and materials do. The capital outlay. So this is where my planning to buy buses. This is where the state purchase that we had that we waited on for almost 2 years came in. So the two of them were more than we could afford. So we let the state plan come in, and then we just didn't have enough to make a difference to go out to bid to get significant cost savings on our buses. And so we just took the state payment. It was a timing thing. We didn't anticipate until next year they came in, or this year now. They came in last year. So it kind of messed up our planning. It's a nice way to say that. We didn't buy the buses we anticipated because the state bid buses finally came in. Other objects is just kind of low. That's kind of some of our contingency in case we lose an engine or transmission. And then we did have to buy some more equipment this year. So overall, the fund is down itself, but those were some changes that we saw. Looking at next year, of course, we see the EAV go up for our salaries. We see our salaries go up. It's just what we have in our compensation plan. There may be a need for the increase of insurance or somebody changing their plan. Purchase services are the same. Everything else is the same except our capital outlay. I did go back and add another bus to this amount. There may be room to squeeze one more bus into purchase as we get caught up because the state plan kind of threw us off on our fleet management plan, and it kind of messed things up. We waited quite a while for those buses. And so just a little bit of increase here is really that bus. And I will say that after we purchase these particular buses, we will max out our fuel storage for propane buses. And so either we have to think about a third tank someplace, or the use of, we've seen diesel extremely high, so we'll be looking more at gasoline buses. And we'll keep kind of utilizing that fuel plan to figure out where we need to position our fleet. All right, so here's the transportation fund. 5.4 million balance to 4.4 in revenues, just over 5 million expenses. So this will pull the fund balance down a little bit, which is kind of what we need. That extra bus money was out there that we'll now use through the bus purchase process. Questions on this? Okay, retirement fund. It just kind of follows what we have for benefits. After we do the benefits, I calculate in Fund 50 the FICA, Medicare, and the IMRF, and it just kind of follows that. On the revenue side, I pulled this down a little bit because I levied less money here. The fund balance is getting higher, and so that's just kind of what it is. I hope to draw that down a little bit over time. And this just follows what I mentioned for our costs. Actually came in a little bit lower than we estimated, and we'll go back and take a look at that and figure out why we were off and how to get a little better. And then this just increased a little bit more as we talk about some changes in salary also affects their benefits. So 4.3 million in Fund 50, the retirement fund, and 3.3 million in revenue. And then you see 3.6, almost 3.7 estimated expenditures to draw the fund balance down. We want to keep drawing that down. We don't really want that particular fund to be that high. It's that high for that reason because we did have a lot of interest income that also went into there. So now we're gonna offset that. And so we look at the levy scheme of that, we realign some dollars instead of this fund to someplace else where we needed it. We will likely do that again next year. All right, capital projects, 65,000 is the interest income. As we spend this fund down, then we have less to invest, so that reflects the return. This is what we think will come in from the ed fund. We believe, in addition to the 2.5 million, we'll need about 5 to 5.5 million, roughly in between there. This number will probably end up being at 7.7, but until we get all the bids and we get a little farther into the summer construction, I left that number a little higher, and then that would be the transfers amount. Transfers don't hit, they hit the revenue, but the expense side, they're kind of off the schedule. So when you see the state form, you see revenue expenses, and then there's a transfer part like in and out that kind of hit below that. So that's kind of where you'll see some of those transfer numbers. Everybody good? Yes. Yeah.
The 8 million, when we talk at the facilities task force meeting, we were talking, you know, trying to keep it below 9. So does this mean we're budgeting less now? We're not going to hit the 9 in that?
Not for this particular year. So this year, the spend that I have is 8.2 million.
Okay.
And this will be more like 7.7 million. It lifted a little higher until we get a little farther through summer construction in case we have something that we discover and need to put a little more money there, just to be safe. And then this is the expenditure part of that, so you'll see that we did 7.8 million, and we'll do 7.7. Keep in mind too, there's another $500,000 that would be if this was Fund 90. And this is the fund balance, so we had $822,000, 65,000 revenue, 7.7 expenditures. Kind of puts us a little back where we started. So that is the cushion that Dana and I talk about from year to year that we want to keep in that fund as well. We invest it, we have a cushion, we have it for in case there's issues, keeps us where we need to be. Working cash, it is strictly an investment, return on investment fund, so we anticipate a little bit less on interest this year, but still growth. There are no expenses in this fund. And we see we believe we'll see the fund balance go from 17.7 million to 18.4 million. There's a couple things that the board will probably want to do with some of the transfers. We had a conversation about maybe moving this some other places, and if our funds do get too low, that would be a viable option through board action. Require a public notice, a hearing, and then a transfer resolution, but we certainly could do that. TOR funds the same way, that's all interest income. I had the income budgeted for 1,200 and ended up higher. I had drafted the budget in fiscal year 27 the same, but I did feel this was more appropriate based upon the return, so I did increase that slightly. There's no expenses in this fund, and so that fund balance as well increases from 36,000 to 37,000. And our last fund before we review our balances, this is our fire prevention safety. Traditionally, you don't want a large balance in there, but one of the reasons why will be on the next slide. And so this was part of the levy. The other part starts coming in July, August, September, October to cover that 500 million that we need. And so this was the original budget. That cost came in a little bit higher this past year. And so I do want a fund balance just in case that occurs and we can absorb that cost within the fund.
Todd,
So,
if
yes.
we have legal fees for whatever, but not court fee, you know, not
Tort?
yeah. The court goes in the tort, but the just normal legal fees, if we hire an attorney to look at something, that's just a normal operating fund?
Yes, it comes out of 2310, which is the board's account, because the board is the one that has the legal authority. That comes out of the ed fund.
Ed fund.
Some districts use this differently than ours does. Some of them use it for insurance like CLIC. Some of them use it for legal costs or settlements. And so you can use that fund differently. We just typically take ours out of Fund 10.
Todd, when that comes out of the ed fund, that's purchase services is what we would consider
It
that,
is,
right?
yes. So
Yeah.
we traditionally have used our Fund 10 as if it was the tort fund, and I will tell you in my time here, I have expended money out of this particular fund once. It's not common, but that fund has been used before. Okay, so again, we see that balance going lower. Again, I like that little reserve in case something comes in over budget. And then these are some potential changes. Again, non-payment of taxes or the board of review process, enrollment changes, any changes to funds carryover or reimbursement rates, especially in categoricals or funding levels, expenses over understaffing, post-budget changes to employee benefits. After we set that, it could be an emergency or a major change of life. Any overages are projected in our purchase services, changes to fuel or utility costs or CPI. This year we took a big hit on fuel. If you go back and look at that in our transportation fund, it was well beyond what we could have imagined the cost would be. And so that's mindful to have that blended fleet to kind of absorb some of that. I think the high that I seen for propane was about $2.15 a gallon, where gas went almost $4 something on us, and we really don't have much in diesel. So capital outlay is just really dependent on supply chain, weather availability. Other objects are just changes in our student population and tuition costs. And then lastly, non-capital is just any breakages in some of our equipment that are not foreseen. Then the last two pieces are I look at fund balance and look at any auditors accruals till we get to that final change in our budget. So this is the summary of revenues. I won't read them to you, but they reflect what we discussed in each of the funds. $125,510,388 for revenue, and that is compared to what we mentioned our expenses, $126,515,448. So it's just a little over. It does not reflect transfers. Transfers change some of those numbers when we get here. Transfers make this costly. So estimate our fund balance at $70,688,278, and anticipate our revenue of being about $125,510,388. We will then see some of these other costs come in with this. This is where I added back the cost of the expenditures for the capital improvement fund, $134,215,448. I believe by the end of what we project with transfers, the fund balance will be $61,983,218. And then I think the best thing to do is to go back and look at that 10-year plan that we have and see, are we kind of trending where we think we would be with that fund balance. And that's where the board encouraging me to move to that process has been beneficial to see if we're hitting those numbers, and those have some good data points in them for us to see if we're hitting some higher low points. Okay, so this is our budget timeline. We hope to have the adopted budget on August 24th. We'll then put on file with the county, and we will have a budget in place that we will update our financials with. All right, other questions?
Anyone with any questions?
None for me, thanks.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Okay, moving on to item number 5, future agenda items. We will have the 2026-2027 final budget, what we just discussed at the August 24th meeting. Item number 6, items for recommendation to full board. We have the 2026-2027 tentative budget. Do I have a motion to move that onto the full board?
So move.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, we'll move that on to the full board. Item number 7 is information, legislative update. I don't have anything for this. Dr. Barrett, anything?
Nothing at this time, no.
Okay, great. Moving on, item number 8 is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we stand adjourned. Thank you.